Hi and welcome to the third episode of my tutorial series on AWS using CDK TypeScript. In the last episode we made our first CDK stack. In this episode we will continue on that stack by adding version control and CI/CD. If you didn't follow along last episode, don't worry, we will get the code for it later on in this video from GitHub. So let's have a look at the agenda and the goals of this video. If we look at the agenda for this video, the goal is to apply a version control and a simple CI/CD pipeline to the AWS CDK stack that we made in last episode. First we will have a look at what is version control and what can we do with it. Then we will have a look at what is CI/CD. Finally we will set up version control and a simple CI/CD pipeline using GitHub. Let's start with version control. What is version control and why do we need it? A basic explanation is that version control is used to keep track and manage changes to your code. It also enables collaboration with others, as it is a tool where you can save your code and different versions of it, and others can have access or you can restrict access to certain parts. Let's have a look at a brief explanation with some examples. So let's say that I have a project, a CDK stack, and there's a second collaborator that wants to collaborate with me on my code. This is where GitHub comes into play. So I will add my code to the repository. It's a place where you add your code, which will create a branch. This is just a version of my code. And often the first branch is called main or master. Then the collaborator can pull my branch from GitHub and now also has the project on their computer. Now they can create a new branch. This is a new version, and add this to GitHub. This will then appear in GitHub as a new branch, as I said, with a different name, and it will contain some changes to the code. We want to of course add these changes to our main branch so that we have an up-to-date code base, and this is where we merge the code into our main branch. And this is also where the CI and CD part will come in later. Now let's have a look at CI/CD. CI/CD can be split into two parts, CI and CD, where CI stands for continuous integration, and it's the part where you validate new code changes by compiling it and then running some automated tests on it. And by implementing CI, you reduce the chance of integrating errors or bugs into your code. CD can stand for either continuous delivery or continuous deployment, but in the CD part you merge your changes to the main branch, or it can be also a development branch or a different branch, and also deploy it automatically to the environments you want it in. CI and CD are often split, but can also be put together into one pipeline. And as you see, it's an infinite circle. Because it's a way of working and not something you just do once. And by implementing a CI/CD pipeline often, you greatly reduce the chance of bugs and errors in the production. So in this video, we'll be using GitHub Actions as a simple CI/CD pipeline to deploy and check our CDK code. To get started with version control, we will first go to the link that I added in the video description, which will take you to Git. And here we will download Git. You can download it here. If you're working on Mac or Linux, you can also download it here. As I'm working on Windows, I will download the Windows version. And just like previous installs, it's just downloading the executable. And then I'm just gonna press next, 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 next. And it will start installing Git and Git bash. After Git is installed, we also need a GitHub account. So if you already have a GitHub account, you can sign in. But if you don't have an account, just sign up. You can fill in the form here, and after you're signed up, you can also sign in to create a repository. So this is probably the screen that you will see after logging in. And in the upper corner here, we will go to your repositories. We want a new repository. I already have a few. I'm going to create a new one. And I will call it my first CDK. It's the same name as the project, but it doesn't have to be. And then we can choose to set it either on public, that everyone can see it, or we can put it on private, and then only you can see the project and people that you add to it. So let's create a repository. So now we have a repository and we can add our code here. You also have some commands here that show you how to do this. We will do this later. After we have installed Git and we have a GitHub account, we now need to configure Git to work with our GitHub account. So I'm going to go to a folder where I want to keep my project. And if you already have your project there, that's also okay. But here I'm going to open Git bash. And Git bash will open a terminal. And you should have it installed after you installed Git. And here I will now configure my Git username and my Git email. The command to do this is git config -- global then user.name, and this is Faruk Ada, that's the username that I use on GitHub. And secondly, after executing this, we also need to configure our email. And our email in this case, how to do that is git config -- global user.email. This is of course not my email, but you should use the email that you used to create the account at GitHub. And after also executing this, we can now use Git on our computer. For those that didn't have the project on their computer yet, there's another link in the video description which will take you to the repository of the project that we made last time. You can then click on the green button, copy this link here, and now that we have Git configured, we can clone this repository to our local computer. So what I'm gonna do is again open Git bash here, to open the terminal again, and I will execute the command git clone, and then I will paste in the link that I just copied and press enter. And as you see, now we have the project here on our local computer. If you followed along with the tutorial last time, you still need to instantiate Git in the project. We do this with the command git init, and Git will then watch for files to add to our remote repository. We can add these files with the command git add and then -a to add them to a commit. And a commit is just a bundle of changes we want to send to our remote repository. The command is git commit -m, and then we need to add a commit message, which will be first commit in this case. And we have a bundle ready. We'll now go to the repository and then copy the link to the remote repository. And then we will add this also with the command as is. If you clone the repository, you still need to remove it first. The command to do this is git remote remove origin, and then execute the previous command to your own origin repository. Now I will do one last change. I will also change the branch name. It's currently master, and I will change it to main. The command is git branch, then capital M and then main. And now we can push it to our repository. The command to do this is git push, and first time we add -u origin main. Let's go to the repository and refresh. And here we have our code with our commit message, first commit. Now that we have our code in GitHub, let's go back to our editor and create a feature branch to merge in to our main branch. We do this with the command git checkout -b. I will call my branch CI/CD, and I'm creating it from main. After doing this, we can see in the corner here that we switch to the branch CI/CD. Now let's create a directory to house our GitHub Actions. I'll call it .github/workflows. And GitHub actually expects our workflows to be in this directory, so don't use a different name. Then we'll add two files here, ci.yaml. The GitHub Actions are YAML files, and then another one for the CD part. Okay, now we have two files, and let's fill them in. So I've already made a GitHub action for the CI and CD. I'll paste it in and let's go through it. So GitHub Actions consist out of 3 parts. First we have the name, which is CI in this case. Then we have the on, which describes the trigger. So this will run on a pull request that's targeting the main branch. You could of course have multiple triggers or different triggers, but for now we will use the pull request. Then the third part of a GitHub action is the jobs. You can also have multiple jobs, and for now I'm just using the job called build, which will have a couple of steps, and these are the actions that we'll take to implement the CI part. So what will we exactly do? First we'll echo the user that initiated this workflow. Then we will use the official GitHub Actions action for checking out our code from our repository. I will also add a link to their GitHub repositories, and if you can use the official GitHub action, always do use it. That's why also for the installing node, we are using the official setup node from GitHub Actions. This will allow us to use npm on our runner, and with npm we will install our dependencies. Then we will also build and compile our CDK stack. We will run a couple of unit tests. I will add them in a bit. And finally, because this is not the CD yet, we will use CDK diff. And the CDK diff command, we also used it in the last episode. CDK diff, and then this is the stack name we are currently working with. And we need this part so that we don't need to approve it. Normally you would always get a pop-up asking you if you do want to deploy it. And with this we can bypass it. It's for the automation. Okay, so we have that part now. Then let's go to the CD part. And the CD part will mostly be the same. So this is the CD part. And the big difference here is, well, the name is different, of course. The trigger is pretty much the same, except for we are now looking at closed pull requests. And in combination with the if statement, we will only run this if there is a pull request that's targeting the main branch and that has been merged in. What will we do? We will again echo the user. We will check out our code. We will install npm on our runner, then use it to install our dependencies. We will build our stack, and this time we will execute the CDK deploy, and again our stack name, and so that we don't need to approve it. And if you noticed, we also have a AWS access key and AWS secret access key in the workflow, and we do need to add them to our secrets, and we will do so in a bit. But this would then conclude our CI and CD workflows. Let's then add some tests to our project so that we can also run them in the CI part. In a later video, I will go more in depth in how to test your code, as well as your Lambda code and the cloud formation that the CDK will output. But for now, I will just add some example codes just to run it in the CI pipeline. So here I will replace the test that was already there with a simple test that will take our stack, and then inside of the template we are searching for a AWS Lambda function resource, and that resource should have the function name for CDK Lambda. It should have the runtime that we put in the lib, and also the handler and memory size. But like I said, I will go more in depth in how to test in a later video. And also for our, let me see, my first CDK app. Also add some unit tests for the Lambda now. And like I said, we have a super simple Lambda, so there's not really a lot to test. And that's why I will just go for 2 scenarios. So in the first one, we will give it a name, Faruk, just like in the previous episode. And then we expect good job Faruk. If we give it an empty string, it should output good job. So this is what we expect. And currently I don't have the node modules installed. That's why you see the wrinkly lines are underneath it. But Jest is installed with the CDK. So you do not need to install any additional packages to add your test to it. So now we have also some tests. We have our CI and CD. Then we could add these to our new commit. So what I'm gonna do is git add, git commit, and we need to add a commit message again. I will say adding CI, CD and test. Okay, now we can push it, and because this is a new branch, we again need to add the -u origin and CI CD. If this was a branch that already existed, we could just use git push. So, okay, we've now pushed it to our repository. So let's have a look there. And we see that it's here. And let's now then add our AWS access key and secret access key so that we can use them in the GitHub Actions. Now that we have the code here, we need to add AWS credentials in our GitHub Actions. We do that by going to Settings, and in Settings we go to Secrets and then Actions. And here we add a new repository secret. So I said before, don't show your access key and secret access key to anyone else, but I will again paste them in here as I have them in a new user, and I will remove them later. So we need to call it the AWS underscore access underscore key underscore ID. And the reason we do that is because we also use this in our workflow. And you can just paste your secret in like this. So I will save this. I will add another secret, as we also need our AWS secret access key. And I will also copy that one in. And after saving this, we're actually ready to create a pull request. So if we go back, we see that our branch is here. I'm going to create a new pull request. And when doing that, we can see the changes that we're going to add to our main branch. So we're adding a CD workflow. We're also adding a CI workflow. We added a test and we changed one of the tests. So that all looks good. Let's create a pull request. And when creating a pull request, this should trigger one of our actions, the CI one. And in any second, we should see it running. Yes. So let's have a look what's going to happen now. So it looked like we already checked out the code. We're also installed Node and now are installing the dependencies for our project. Okay, now we're gonna build our CDK stack. Can take a minute. Okay, now we're running the unit test that we added. So 2 tests for the Lambda and also 1 for the CloudFormation. Seems that also passed, so we're gonna run the CDK diff command. And that also passed. And we can also open this action up to see what actually is gonna be added. And as we see here, it's the Lambda that we expect. Everything looks good so far. I'm gonna merge this one into the main branch. And after merging, we expect the CD workflow to be triggered. And we do see that a workflow is being triggered, and it is the deployment workflow. So now again, we're gonna install our dependencies. We're gonna build our CDK stack, but this time we will deploy it to our AWS environment. And after that, let's have a look if it's there. So now we're at the CDK deploy step. It seems to be successful, but just a moment to be sure. What you see here is the process of the roles and the components that you want that are getting created. So you can see that if one also fails, you would see which component failed here. And it's pretty much the same as on your console, but this way, whenever you push and merge your code in, it gets done automatically. And this is of course a very simple CI/CD pipeline. You can make this much more complex and much more secure. And we see that it did deploy it in our environment. So we should have now a CDK stack in our AWS environment with the Lambda code in it. So let's go to our AWS account. Now, where to see your CDK stack? For this, we will go to CloudFormation. And we also had a Lambda, so let's also check that one out. It's important to also select the right region. I'm in EU West 1, so I will check EU West 1 for a stack. And here I do see the My First CDK stack. If we open it up, we can see that it has a Lambda resource. And if we go to the Lambdas, also in EU West 1, we can see that our Lambda is here. And our code is here. So I don't know if our test event is still here. No, but we can make a new one. Okay, so let's save this and then run it. And we can get the correct response. I entered my name, Faruk, and we get good job, Faruk. So we deployed our CDK stack through the GitHub Actions automatically. And again, this is a very simple CI/CD pipeline. And I will, in a later video, also make AWS code pipeline. So the final step that's left in this video is to destroy our CDK stack. You can do that with the command that we learned in the last episode, or you can just go to CloudFormation and then select the stack and press delete. So after deleting it, it should of course also delete the resources in it, and then we expect the Lambda that we created just now to also be deleted. Delete is in progress. Let's check the Lambda. It's still there. Let's renew. Yeah, it's gone. So the stack has been deleted. So that was this video. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed yourself or learned anything, consider to like and subscribe. And if you want to see anything else, consider to leave a comment with the subject and I will consider to add it to the future videos. Thank you.